All right, good afternoon, Silent Command Stream. This is Samuel Crawford. Very shaky video here. We're gonna stabilize it. Hey, so I actually right now I'm commuting from class in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, back home to my house in Birmingham. And I've just been spending a lot of time in the car lately this semester, and I'm figured, hey, I'm gonna take advantage of this time and just talk about public speaking and the way that I think you should do public speaking as a drum major. It's something that I really enjoy and that I'm really passionate about. So we're just going to kind of, in this Silent Command Stream series, just discuss public speaking and discuss kind of what you should do and what you shouldn't do in public speaking, and really kind of talk about like how to know how to manage your group's mental thought and how to manage your group's kind of like the ideological approach that they take to doing their job. All right, so let's talk about public speaking. Public speaking is something that I think has been done really well by a lot of people throughout history, and has been done in like a mediocre way by a lot of people throughout history. I'm a huge fan of presidential history. You may have heard me say that before. And throughout this series, we're going to be analyzing some of the great like presidential speeches of history and kind of what makes them great. But right now, this is just sort of an introduction to public speaking and kind of some things that as a drum major or as a student leader you should be aware of before you undertake it. Okay, so as far as the technique of public speaking, let's talk about the technique of speaking to a group of people. Number one, you're probably going to want to speak more slowly than you think you need to. When I first started out as a drum major, my core manager, his name was Bill Hamilton, literally the first time he heard me talk, he was like, slow down. Because I would talk so quickly, really because I was nervous and because I had a lot of information that I wanted to get out quickly, but it ended up coming out like this and I talked really fast and people didn't really understand what I was saying because I was going so fast, and it was hard for them to take in the information because I was going so fast, repeating myself and saying things for emphasis, but there was really no emphasis because I was going too fast. See how it was hard to understand that? Maybe you got some of it, but there was no inflection, and I didn't take time like I'm doing now to emphasize the words that I wanted to be emphasized. I didn't use hand gestures. We're going to talk about all of that. So, again, don't go too quickly. Second thing is think about when you speak. I think a lot of the time as young drum majors or young leaders, we think, I've got to talk to my group every day, or I've got to talk to my group all the time. And of course, in drum corps, we have opportunities at the end of almost every rehearsal to even talk to your group. But that's not what you really want to do. You want to talk when it's necessary and only say what you really believe is necessary. So for discerning when something needs to be said, it's really vital that you have a good finger on the pulse of the ensemble. And what that to me means, and in my experience means, you need to be paying attention to how well the rehearsal goes. You need to be paying attention to kind of what level of focus the group has in rehearsal. Are they executing instructions well, or are they just kind of going through the motions? Are you resetting quickly? Is the staff having to get mad at them or get onto them a lot? Is your band director having to get mad at them or get onto them frequently? What is kind of the mood in the rehearsal? The next thing that you want to know is there anything that people can be really frustrated about, or something that may need to be addressed directly? I'll give you the example. In 2017, everybody knows we had that massive stage on the field at Blue Coats, the Jagged Line stage. And that was really difficult for us from a logistics standpoint. People didn't sleep as much because we were working on building the stage. It was a big struggle that year because a lot of people felt like they were being treated poorly. So that was a battle that I kind of had to constantly be aware of and be thinking about. Like, are people mad about the stage? Are they mad about something? What are they mad about? And what do I need to do to address it? I remember when I would get up in front of the drum corps at the end of a rehearsal, I would often think, okay, I have to have something motivational to say right now. Or I have to say something that's gonna, almost like, homie just like almost knocked me off the road. No, like I have to say something that's gonna mean a whole lot, or something that's going to inspire them. At every time, I have to get up there and say something meaningful and deep every time that a rehearsal's over. And that's just not practical. And a group doesn't really respond well to you trying to make a big motivational speech at the end of every rehearsal. What they do respond well to is you speaking from your heart when you feel it on your heart to speak. There's a great old saying that is, a fool speaks because he has to say something, but a wise man speaks because he has something to say. So are you speaking to your group because you have to say something, or are you speaking to your group because you have something to say? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. Okay, let's talk about how to foster a buy-in attitude within your group through public speaking. That's something that I think we can often miss out on. Like I've seen a lot of drum majors, and this is kind of when I spoke earlier about the mediocre leaders or people that have spoken in mediocrity throughout history. I'm kind of talking about these people that get up there in front of the group at the end of a rehearsal and say kind of predictable stuff. They say like, yeah, that was a great rehearsal today, guys. We really did some good work, and you should be really proud of what you did today. That's just kind of like, okay, anybody could say that. Like, anybody could say that. But you don't want to phone it in like that. You want to get up there and say something that's really meaningful. And to me, it will encourage people to tune you out if you get up there and say what's expected. But if you say something that's maybe a little bit more truthful than they expect, or maybe a little bit more intuitive than they expect, it's going to go over better. For instance, instead of saying, yeah, guys, we worked really hard today, good job, that's all I have. Get up there and say, hey, we faced a lot of challenges today. We faced a ton of challenges. It was really hot. We were out here and it was sweaty, and I could tell a lot of us were really struggling, but you pushed through it. And the good groups push through circumstances like that and are happy on the other side of it. So let today be our model for pushing through to the end. Like, today is the standard because we pushed through. See how that's more exciting and more engaging than just saying, good work, we did some good work today. That's kind of a cop-out to say that. But if I go out there and really put myself into it and say what I believe and acknowledge the difficulty, it's going to come across a lot better and motivate them a lot more. Okay, so we've talked about I touched briefly on the technique of talking about it, or of public speaking. Let's talk a little bit more about that technique. So I was always, when I was drum major, a huge fan of, at a rehearsal, like rehearsal ends, the person in the box or the person running the rehearsal says, okay, rehearsal's over. Then I would always say, let's bring it in. And I would hop off the podium and go meet them on the 50, or meet them on a location, always have them circle up around me. So I could give them logistical information, the Blue Coats logistical information, or probably give them motivational information if they needed it. So that's kind of the way that I would recommend that you approach it, whether you're a section leader or a drum major, or just kind of whatever role you're in. If you feel the need to speak after rehearsal, have them bring it into you. That's kind of generally the model that I would encourage you to take. So everybody's circled up around you, or your section circled up around you, or the full band or whatever is circled up around you. And then I always kind of like to start with a hook. And in creative writing, that's often a good tool to use as a hook. So you maybe start saying, like, you know what, here you go. I'll play you this example from a speech that I gave earlier this summer. Check it out.
I thought I was going to get Princess Dream. Hey!
We're alive!
All right, what up? Hey, so I'm a big fan of analogies, and I've got one for you, okay? Have you ever taken a test in school?
No.
Hilarious.
Homeschool.
Have you ever taken a test in school and you come to a question and you're like, man, we did not talk about this in class. I got no clue how I'm expected to know how to answer this question.
Hashtag college.
Right? You've had that question. I have to answer this, and I'm going to answer it correctly. Right? Today was one of those questions. Right? It's hot. We got a lot of drill to learn. We're out here for 3.5 hours in the heat on the turf. And I think we made the right decision. And the good drum corps, the ones that succeed and get done what they want to get done, they don't waste time thinking about how stupid the question is. They start answering it right away. Yeah. We have to do that every time. Good job doing that. Cool? Yeah. And tonight we get a great performance, show off what we've done, come back out tomorrow and do it again. Okay.
So in that speech, I kind of started out with a hook, right? The test. Like, that's a little bit of an idea of like, hey, this is like, where's he going with this? He's mentioning a test and kind of asked a generic, who here has ever taken a test? Like, that's funny. And then of course, being the 21st century millennials that core was, they gave a snarky response, to which I was kind of dismissed it because I wanted them to be serious, and I kind of signaled to them by saying hilarious that this was going to be a serious talk. So after I dismissed their non-serious response with a serious response, I spent some time with the analogy of the test and said, have you ever taken a test that you felt like was stupid, or seen a question that you felt like was stupid? And this is very relatable, and it's something that every kid in there, that is the majority of which are students, can relate to. Everybody's taken a stupid test. Most tests are stupid, they would probably say. So through that analogy, I've got them hooked. That's my hook, is the test. And I said, I've got an analogy for you, so here it is. So I give them the analogy, and then the analogy in a sort of like post-rehearsal motivational speech needs to be easily grasped, which this one was. So they're starting to kind of play with that analogy in their mind, and then I make the transfer from the test to the situation that the group found ourselves in that day, which was, it was hot, it was sweaty, we're learning difficult drill out here, and there's no dots on the field, on that field that we were learning on. It was a really nice facility at Indiana Wesleyan, but there were no gridded like hashes on the field, so we were not able to use those to help us learn drill. So it was a frustrating day, and I acknowledged that difficulty, but also motivated them through that difficulty. And that, to me, is kind of what makes a great motivational speech. And kind of that was the technique that I took, was give analogy, acknowledge difficulty, and then let the difficulty be a motivator pointing forward. Because difficulty is one thing, and it's always good to acknowledge difficulty, but then you have to frame difficulty in moving forward context. You have to frame it as an opportunity for growth and compliment the group on taking advantage of that difficulty. So here I said, the great groups are the ones that can stop wasting time considering how difficult the test is and just answer the question. And that I think we did a good job doing that today. So that is my effort, and I don't know if it was totally successful. I would like to think that it was. That's my effort of taking the example, the analogy, and making a transfer to the future and motivating them to look back on the difficult rehearsal that we had just finished as progress and as an adventure, or as just as a growth opportunity. So in terms of the technique of what I did, I really went from analogy to transfer to what we had just done. So hook, analogy, transfer. That was my approach. Sometimes you can just do hook and then talk about what just happened. Acknowledge difficulty, and to me that's the formula ideologically for a good motivational speech to your group. Now, I probably gave, we have 90 days in drum corps. I probably gave 30 motivational speeches throughout the course of the season. Truly just like for the sake of just motivating them after something difficult, or even just when something had happened. So that's like 1/3 of the time I was giving them. And in your high school band, I would encourage you to do even less than that, especially if you're a younger leader and you're learning how to do this. You're learning how to motivate, you're learning kind of how to read your ensemble. You don't need to be giving one every day, and you probably don't need to be giving one more than once a week in your band season. Like if you, I'll play a clip right here for you of Tim Tebow, who's known to be a great leader in college football, once said,
"Hey, let's go, get in here! Let's go. Get in here right now! Get in here! Hey, we got 30 minutes for the rest of our lives! 30 minutes for the rest of our lives! That's our bad in the first half. It ain't happening. We get the ball. I promise you one thing. We're going to hit somebody, and we're taking it down the field for a touchdown. I guarantee you that.
Guaranteed.
Look at me.
Let's go.
We got 30 minutes.
Let's go.
For the rest of our lives.
For the rest of our lives.
Let's go.
Let's go. Lock arms. Hey, hey, we a team. Hey, lock arms. Lock arms. Hey, put your heart on the table. Hey, we got to go. So, hey, let's go, D.
So Tim Tebow was about minimalist, absolutely. He said, I'm not going to waste my voice and become white noise to these people. I'm going to wait until it absolutely matters. So that's kind of what his approach was. And I think that's valuable for you as a high school leader, to not speak to your group every time. It's probably more valuable to choose your opportunities wisely and only speak when you think it's good, or only speak when you think it's needed. In terms of technique, we can go into, and I will go into later, more techniques on public speaking that will make your speech effective. I mean, really just look back at some of the ways that I speak to you, even in these videos. Right now, I'm in the car and I'm talking to my cell phone. Like, that's literally what I'm doing. But I'm still speaking with effect. And the way that I do that is I slow down when I want to emphasize specific words and make them stick in your brain a little bit better. I don't do this a lot, but I've seen some professors or public speakers that will repeat things over and over again. They'll repeat things over and over again. I just said that twice, and if you kind of weren't listening, maybe hearing me repeat it kind of opened or perked up your ears to think, hey, maybe this is something important that he wants me to understand. So sometimes repetition can be valuable. Another great skill is, like I said earlier, pausing for emphasis, or pausing to let an idea sink in. And this is something that I'm still working on, and that because my mind moves really fast, or I talk sometimes still too quickly, I don't do enough of pausing for emphasis. And this works especially well when you're having to give a more negative, or not negative, but a more tough love, confrontational talk. I worked with several high school bands in my area in Birmingham, and the other night I was speaking to one of them over the microphone, and I just said, I'm not feeling the level of effort that you're giving to me tonight, blank band. And then I probably paused, and I literally in my head counted to 10, and just kind of let the silence almost be a little bit awkward. But that silence is not intended to just be awkward. It's intended for them to kind of reflect back on what I just said. Like I said, I'm not feeling your effort level. And maybe it frustrates them a little bit, but it's designed to be time for them to process what I've just said, whatever that means, and for them to kind of do a little self-assessment. And then I came back and said, I know you're capable of more effort than you're giving right now. And my challenge to you and the rest of this rehearsal is to up your effort level and perform like the blank, insert name here, band that I know you can be. And I'm not gonna tell you the name of that high school for obvious reasons. But that's kind of my approach to like a confrontational talk. And that's the technique that I use for a confrontational talk, is giving them time and being slow enough in your critique to present, or for them to process that information. And that may be uncomfortable. At first, when I was first learning to public speak, or first learning to talk to a group of people, I just wanted to get through it and get my message across. But if you go really fast through it, it's not going to be as effective, and the people that you're talking with are very likely kind of going to not take your information in as well. But if you can pause, appear thoughtful, and be comfortable in the silence, and that's difficult too. If you can be comfortable in the silence, going to be really effective. See what I just did right there? I literally paused in that silence and paused in the silence and gave you some time to think about that. So let's review. The best ways to public speak effectively technique-wise are to slow down, to pause for effect, and to use silence effectively. Those are, to me, the three biggest ways that you can organize your thought from a technique perspective. And then, in terms of knowing when to public speak, and really the things that you need to think about before you even think about technique are, you want to know, does my group need this right now? From an organization standpoint, you're going to want to consider, is there something that needs to be addressed? Do I need to public speak right now? And then you really just want to be calm and deliver your information in a concise way. Let's talk a little bit, this is kind of a PS, let's talk a little bit about delivering instructions. Very often, you as a drum major have to give instructions to your group. You have to say, we're going to go from here to here, rehearsal's going to start here, and you're going to need water, so be sure that you fill up your water jug. Be sure that you fill up your water bottle before we head out to the field. I'd like to, especially when I was first starting as a drum major, I like to organize these things in like a written down form. I would make a little list, like write it down, each announcement that I wanted to give, and then I would literally speak to them, but look at my list, and like just make sure that I said everything, because I will definitely forget stuff if I don't write it down, and kind of check off the list as I make these announcements to people. So the list approach to making announcements, making logistical announcements, has been very effective. So next time, we're going to break down some of the most famous presidential speeches of all time and kind of take a look at why some of these presidents are very effective in speaking. And I would encourage you to not be critical of what you're hearing the president say in terms of substance, but just look at the technique of what they're saying and why it's effective. I think that we as leaders in the band world have a lot to learn from politicians. And yes, they can sometimes be kind of sleazy and skeezy and maybe manipulative. And of course, you're not going to be that way. But most of the time, the politicians that get elected are the ones that can speak effectively in public and can persuade people to believe what they believe. And there is a certain element of that involved in being a drum major or section leader and speaking to your section. You want to be able to persuade them to think the way that you think. And again, it's not in a manipulative way, it's in a leading way. And it's because you believe that what you think, or you believe in your value system, and you believe that it's correct. So you want to say, hey, this is what I've noticed. Maybe you agree with me and can notice it too. It's less of a, here's what you should think, and more of a, let's work on this together. Have you thought about it this way? It's more of presenting an idea than it is stating an argument. So that's the approach that we're going to look at going forward in public speaking. Stay tuned for more when we talk about the successful presidential speeches in history and some of the devices that make them successful. See you next time. Peace.